Well, the regional round of college baseball is over for 2025. No upsets whatsoever. All went chalk. Nothing crazy happened. We'll discuss all the boring ins and outs of all that. But first, big shout out to the boys at LSU Shreveport. Perfect season, 59 and 0, winning the NAIA National Championship. Super impressive. Just needed to highlight them real quick before jumping into some more serious business. But yeah, that's seems like an impossible feat going undefeated. No matter what your competition is, there's always going to be those hangups where one game, you mess up a little bit, but not here. They were able to dominate the competition, run through the tournament as well, and yeah, go undefeated. Super impressive stuff.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's just unreal. I feel baseball is a game of failure, individually and team wise. I mean, we see it all the time. All these, dominant super teams throughout a season have at least one weekend where they slip up. And, baseball is just a game where the skill gap doesn't necessarily show as much a lot of the time. I mean, we saw it this weekend in all these regionals, a lot of upsets. All these teams are capable of beating each other, especially in a one off fashion. Um, and so incredible to go an entire season without losing a game somehow.
Yeah, now going into some more serious headlines, we got the drama with Kevin O'Sullivan, your namesake. I want to hear your opinions about it since you have such a great connection with him. But, you know, seemed like a little bit of a bully over the weekend. It's not, I feel like, the first time similar allegations have come up before, but this seemed a little bit more serious and consistent. There are a lot of stories coming up about what what happened over the weekend at Coastal Carolina, um, but doesn't look good no matter what the case is. Obviously, Florida did put out their apology with Kevin O'Sullivan also being attached to that. But that's just PR. Seems like they had to do that no matter what. I think overall the sense of the SEC seeming a little too cocky sometimes, especially when they're on the losing end or something goes a little wrong, they kind of blow things out of proportion. So, well, we kind of saw similar things elsewhere, but yeah. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I don't think Kevin O'Sullivan is known as being the happiest guy in college baseball. I feel like he is pretty notorious for those dugout clips where he's just fuming in the dugout at any given moment. So we know he's a bit of a hothead, and definitely tempers were flaring here, and finally got caught in the camera just ripping into the poor field guy for Coastal, or the one of the team assistants there. Yeah, that's a tough look, and rightfully so, put out an apology. But I wouldn't say Kevin O'Sullivan has the best image in the media by any means. So don't think it changes a whole lot for him necessarily.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but it does show more of like a consistent trend, I think, for some SEC teams. I mean, you're looking at teams like Georgia, players bat flipping. I know it's always a Tennessee thing that they're kind of put aside as we expect that out of them, but we're seeing it from I feel like more and more teams, especially in the SEC, like Georgia bat flipping it at the opposing dugout. No buttons on it. Looks really cool when you're winning, but when you lose, you look kind of like an ass and lack discipline in that sense. And yeah, the way that Georgia lost as well, we'll get into that probably a little later. But yeah, just feels like things tend to compile a lot more during the postseason where you can have all these fun habits during the regular season, but they catch up to you later on and once things get serious.
Yeah, it feels like there's just a lot of entitlement and ego in college baseball in general, I would say now, especially in the SEC, where you have some of the best teams and some of the best players. And, rightfully so, the SEC has won five straight titles. So a lot of the talent is there, but it feels like they really play into that and, think they're entitled to more favorable situations or behavior from the NCAA and stuff along those lines. And so I don't think it is deserving, and we saw that a lot this weekend. That maybe some SEC teams weren't deserving of the opportunities given, and I was glad to kind of see it turn out that way this year.
Yeah, it's good to see. I mean, the parity really pick up. Really surprising, I think, for some teams. Lost the two top seeds in the first round. Vandy, the first team ever to be the number one overall national seed and not make the regional final. So it really shows parity. Some might call Vandy overrated. I would never say that throughout the entire season. I've always been Vandy's number one supporter. Just watch all the clips. Definitely don't have any other opinions on that. But yeah, it showed out. Vandy got hot, but could not keep that momentum going and faced what looked like a relatively easy bracket, but turned out to be one of the tougher ones. Really competitive overall. Just seems like, yeah, parity is at an all-time high in college baseball, which is, I think, very surprising from my opinion. Seems like more and more of the top talent is going to some of the best programs, especially with NIL and the transfer portal. Uh, just gives a huge benefit to the SEC, especially some ACC teams as well that have a lot of history, just to be able to pick up a lot of players and just reload instead of having any sort of gaps in talents that they might have throughout the years if recruiting doesn't go well. But for some reason, the parity seems like it's better than ever. Maybe it's because some of these high schoolers are getting overlooked because top teams can just pick and choose from some other players that are more established in college baseball and have played well at maybe some mid majors, and then they just get picked to go to some other teams. But yeah, for some reason, it seems like parity is at an all time high with the amount of upsets and just close games overall in the regional round.
Yeah, I think one of the things that gets forgotten in this transfer portal era, NIL era, is obviously these top teams are reloading and getting the top transfers in the country, but these second tier teams or lower teams are also reloading just with worse talent than those top teams, but they're still getting, maybe better guys in D2 or D3 more often than they were before. Like you mentioned, might be picking up some of that high school talent that's left behind as well. But they're also plucking teams from those bottom feeders in D1 baseball that are even lower than they are. So I think it just kind of filters up, and the top teams are better than they ever have been. But also these mid majors and fringe teams are also better than they have been in the past because they're reloading in a similar sense, just not at that high level. And I think that's why we still see the parity there, even though these top teams are pretty incredible and obviously reloading every single year.
Yeah, we see it go both ways kind of as well with some of the top teams. Maybe player just didn't work out there, right? Maybe it was a super high recruit, didn't work out, has to reevaluate things, drop down maybe to that mid major level, even though it's not really a drop down at this point. But, obviously a little bit less talent to play against, but still potentially able to really blossom. And who knows, maybe they jump back up to a Power Four conference team after that. But it gives a lot more fluidity instead of just being trapped in a program, maybe going to JUCO, that kind of route. But yeah, any other main talking points that you want to bring up before we break down the super regionals and kind of talk backwards as well about going back to each regional and going through all that fun stuff?
Now let's jump into it.
Sweet. Well, we will have our preview and predictions for each super regional, starting with the Louisville Super, coming out from the Vandy Regional, the number 2 seed from there. Louisville facing the number 3 seed from the Southern Miss Regional, Miami. This is a shocking one. I think a lot of people had some chalk going on, especially for the Vandy Regional. Seems like one of the easier ones on paper, but paper never plays out the way you think it will. I think Southern Miss, that regional, was pretty competitive, at least from an outside looking in. Uh, 4 teams had the ability and showed that they were able to really compete with each other, with Columbia taking that first game against Southern Miss, really putting Southern Miss in a bad spot, and then Miami also upsetting Alabama. Really shocking stuff, having a 4-3 is coming out, but I don't think was as shocking as what we saw from the Vanderbilt Regional, with Louisville having amazing pitching. They've struggled pretty consistently all year long with their pitching staff. The offense has always looked pretty good, but pitching has been a real struggle, and they settled in and looked like one of the best pitching staffs we saw throughout the entirety of the regional round, uh, especially because seemed very offensive this year, but Louisville was able to shut down some teams that had very good offenses. We saw Wright State do shockingly well in that regional. I think they were surprising, but once you really reevaluated the team, it did not surprise many people that they were doing so well and were able to eventually knock out Vanderbilt from getting to that regional final. But yeah, super exciting. This was one of the, I don't know, more chaotic eventual super regional matchups with Louisville and Miami. So I would expect nothing less out of the matchup that comes up this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of two spots in the bracket where neither host made it through. Uh, yeah, Miami wasn't really a shocking one. That regional was, for a lot of people, the hardest regional in the bracket. Certainly up there for me as well. I think probably top two or top three as the most difficult ones there. Columbia is a very solid four seed and felt like either Alabama or Miami were very capable of coming out of this one as well. Yeah, went ahead and picked Shock with Southern Miss, but was not going to be shocked to see anyone come out of this one, really. Miami fights their way out, but Louisville was the big surprise here. Like you mentioned, the pitching hasn't been good most of this year, but they were lights out here. And yeah, Wright State almost beat Vanderbilt twice. Probably should have beat them that first game, too. Really had control the whole way through up until the end. And so, yeah, this is a shocker here. Two ACC teams scrapping. So, all of a sudden the ACC's in much better position than the SEC right now. And so this will be a fun one. And given it's at Louisville, I think I'll go ahead and pick Louisville there. I think it should be a competitive series and could see it going either way, but I'll just give the edge to the home team, especially seeing their pitching staff pitch the way it did this past weekend.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Miami here. Really a coin flip for me. Couldn't decide super convincingly about either team, but I just don't know if Louisville will be able to match the pitching performance from the previous week. If they do, I'll be extremely impressed. But I think Miami, especially with the talent of Daniel Cuvée, that team has looked really good. They went through a gauntlet there the previous round and showed up, came back from getting absolutely smacked in the first regional final game versus Southern Miss and turned it around and won the final 5-4. So I think they might have the edge for me. I'll go with them, but I think this should be a very good series to watch.
Yeah, should be a fun one and definitely could go either way. I like seeing those conference matchups in the super regionals. I think it's fun and adds a little excitement and kind of like rivalry to it, even if it's not a premier rivalry series. There's some familiarity between the teams and adds a little bit of excitement to it.
Yeah, definitely. And now we'll talk about the Corvallis Super Regional, one of the few that had both hosts go through. Oregon State had a very difficult route after losing the first game there versus Southern Miss, but was able to turn things around. The offense really struck gold after that first game, just looked unstoppable. Going, yeah, just putting up insane numbers, especially against USC in that final game, and even the game before that and before that. Once they got into that loser side, had a somewhat tight one with TCU, but was able to keep putting up runs in the end. And yeah, after that, it was just no stopping that team. And then looking at the other side, Florida State looked like the best team in their regional from the start. And just followed through with that. Mississippi State had a good run in them, but Florida State's pitching was very good, as you'd expect. Starting pitching does really well in super regionals, which is probably why I'm favoring Florida State here. But you never know. I think what we saw out of Florida State's pitching in a regional, which is definitely a tougher environment. They only had to play 3 games though, so didn't have to go too deep into that bullpen like we see other teams having to do. But I think that bodes really well for a super regional matchup against Oregon State, whose pitching has definitely turned the corner over the last month or so, but has had their struggles, and I don't think matches up as well as Florida State has shown.
Yeah, this is a you know good part of the bracket here with the 8-9 matchup. You expect it to be a good one, and Yeah, that was very, very well done by Oregon State coming back after losing that first game to St. Mary's. The offense just went ballistic after dropping that first game. I'm going to go with Florida State here. I just really like this team when they're playing well. Like you said, the pitching staff is probably the highlight there, especially with Jamie Arnold, one of the best pitchers in the country. I mean, this team only gave up 7 runs in the regional. Like you mentioned, it was only 3 games, but still, this pitching staff is lights out when they're clicking. And if they play like that again, I really like their chances, even if they're all the way in Corvallis across the country. I still think they'll be playing well.
Yeah, it feels like one of the farthest travels you may be able to even get to from Florida State going to Oregon State there. But yeah, I think this is a very interesting matchup. We saw obviously the Oregon State offense was just clicking on all cylinders. We'll see how that matches up against Florida State's pitching. But like we mentioned with Louisville, I feel like pitching is at an all-time premium right now. There was just so much offense in that first round. Not much pitching going for many teams. Oregon State figured it out throughout the first few games, but I don't know. Yeah, also leaning Florida State in this instance, even though they're on the road. But now we'll send it over to Chapel Hill for their Super Regional, hosting what was a 2 seed at the Oregon Regional in Arizona. Number 5 overall seed North Carolina. Looked pretty good. Stumbled for one game against Oklahoma, but turned things around and looked really solid in their regional final game. Overall, the offense really turned out, and their regional was a pretty tough one, especially facing Oklahoma. Very solid squad there. Knew how to play against tough teams going through the SEC ringer this year, but North Carolina just continued to prove why I thought they were underrated coming into the tournament, being a 5 seed when I really thought they should be number 2. But that doesn't matter at this point in the year. They get to face off against Arizona, who really just ran through their regional as well. The offense was clicking on all cylinders. It seemed like any ball they hit into the air was a home run. Just so many really impressive performances from the hitters there, and the pitching did its job, limited a lot of runs, but seemed like just every other player had multi home run games at some point during the regional for Arizona. So it'll be interesting. North Carolina, also very solid pitching staff. Had a few games where they gave up a decent amount of runs, but overall, I think they're very solid. That's why I'm leaning with them. Home field advantage. But this Arizona squad, they have a really good bullpen. They showed that, and if their offense is clicking like they have been, it's going to be a very tough out for North Carolina.
Yeah, super impressive weekend from Arizona on the road in Eugene there. Tough weekend for Oregon going 0-2. Just immediately bounced out of that regional. Um, but yeah, Arizona's offense was really clicking, and they're up for a tough task, though. North Carolina, one of the more dominant performances this weekend, even though they did lose the first game in the regional final. Those other games, there was just no question who was in control. Those other 2 games against Oklahoma won 11-5 and 14-4. So just wasn't even really competitive necessarily. North Carolina's just playing extremely well. You mentioned we both thought that they should have been a higher seed in this tournament. Felt like they were a top 3 seed. And they certainly played like that this past weekend. I expect them to do it again here. I don't really see them falling short of Omaha this year. I think they're going back again.
Yeah, seems like a team that could be in that finals in Omaha. Just seems kind of set up for them right now. But still have a tough route no matter what. Have to face some of the hottest teams in the country. But now flipping over to the Auburn Super Regional, number 4 overall seed Auburn hosts number 13 overall seed Coastal Carolina. Both teams went 3-0. Didn't have any real struggles. Auburn had a few somewhat close games, but for the most part, looked like the team by far that was the best. And it makes sense. Looked like one of the lighter regionals on paper, and it did play out that way, unlike some of the other ones. But yeah, NC State struggled pretty mightily, had to come back through a loser's run, and then just didn't have the juice in the end. Auburn just crushed them that first regional finals game to end it early. And then Coastal, the only real close game was the only regional final game against East Carolina, won 1-0. Real pitchers duel, which is surprising to see this year. So figured it out there, but did have pretty impressive score lines for the first two games, winning 10-2 and then 18-7. So the offense was clicking for most of it, just ran into a buzzsaw at the end, but still able to turn things around and win there. For some reason, I'm leaning Coastal. I put my belief that Auburn wasn't going to come out of their regional, even though it was one of the lighter ones, and I'm going to stick with that here just for some reason. Don't like Auburn being a number 4 overall seed, and maybe that's just my bias showing that hopefully they get upset here. But I like this Coastal Carolina squad. They've shown throughout the entire year that they're should be one of the best teams in the country, but it will be a tough task going to Auburn and playing there. It's going to be a good environment, but for some reason feeling Coastal.
Yeah, I really hope this super regional goes to a game 3 just from a fan perspective. I think this is a very fun matchup. Like you said, Auburn pretty much just handled their regional pretty easily. It was a light one. Coastal comes out of theirs. That was a fun one. Little upset that I switched my pick last second to East Carolina. It was between Coastal and East Carolina for me. I had faith that Florida wasn't going to be in that regional final, but I just thought East Carolina might have enough steam and that it might just be the year, no expectations that they might make a deep run here. And they played well in that regional final, but Coastal comes out and Coastal looks extremely dangerous. I'm going to stick with Auburn here. It's a team that I've kind of thought was a little underrated throughout the year, have the highest strength of schedule in the country, and they've performed well in those marquee matchups. I'll take them to win here, especially given at home again, but I think this is an exciting one and, wouldn't necessarily be shocked to see Coastal pull off the upset, but I'll stick with Auburn and one of the best players in the country, Ike Irish.
Yeah, I think it just became too much of public knowledge that the ECU everybody knew ECU was having a down year, but now that they beat Florida, everybody's like, oh, now it feels like this is the year. It's a down year. This is the year. Everybody likes talking about how ECU has never made the College World Series as being one of the premier mid majors, and yeah, now on the one down year, the pressure's off, but by people talking about it like that, seemed like everybody was raising their expectations for this ECU squad to be that team to make it. So it kind of feel like counteracted what they had built up potentially. I don't think it really made a difference in the end, but it did feel interesting how the tide completely just turned from what we thought this ECU program was to the expectations of maybe this is the year for them to make a deep run, but eventually did just get chopped down by Coastal Carolina. But very impressive results against Florida. Just pretty much handled them in both the games they played against them, but not enough to go through and beat Coastal Carolina. But after that, we have the second side of the bracket, starting with the Los Angeles Super Regional. Should have been Texas as the number 2 overall seed, but they get upset by UTSA. Maybe not even really an upset. UTSA looked like the better team the entire weekend. They had a great run, just handling Kansas State and then looking like the better team against Texas both times they played them. Just overall, complete, felt like domination. The games were pretty close, but felt like in every facet of the game, UTSA was kind of handling Texas in both the games they played.
Yeah, I was really happy to see UTSA come out of this regional. It was a team for the last month or so that I kept mentioning in our weekly rankings that it was a team that just continued to win games. And there's something for that, when you just continue to win and you're not losing games. Obviously, there's something within that team makeup, the identity that they have something working, and they were able to pull it out on the road in Austin there. I think we were a little down on Texas coming into the tournament just since they weren't playing their best, dealing with a couple injuries down the road as well. Just didn't seem like it was the right time for them to make a deep run necessarily. I'll stick with UCLA in this one. They handled their regional just fine, have arguably the best player in the country on their side, and he's certainly playing like it right now. So just given that home advantage, talent advantage. I'll stick with UCLA here.
Yeah, I'm also gonna stick with the same thing. UCLA just feels like they've just got a complete ball club right now. But going back to UTSA, I think it's extremely beneficial that they were able to face Texas during the regular season. I think and be competitive. They won the game, but even from a mid-major standpoint, if you're able to at least be competitive on the road against the team that you are facing in regionals or potentially facing in regionals, that is extremely beneficial for just the self-belief in a team to be, yeah, we know how to beat these guys. We've done it before, so let's just do it again. Easy enough. You don't have to put too much thought about it. They've already done it, and so just riding that, especially because this Texas team was in more of a downswing than they were when UTSA did go in and beat them in a midweek game. But yeah, just having that advantage is huge for a mid-major. That you know when you go in to a team and have already put up competitive results, you just have that confidence to be able to do it again. And they showed that here and just dominated in most facets of the game against Texas and definitely against Kansas State. But yeah, I think UCLA had a very good run in their regional, only played the 3 games. Some were relatively competitive, but UCLA just kept adding on to their lead no matter what it was. And yeah, Rock Jalowski looks like an absolute dude. He's still got another year in college baseball too, so he'll be on the very tops of the charts for so many different awards as well as getting drafted next year. So tough to look past that. And at home, it's not a crazy environment, I would say, but I think the fans will definitely show out for a super regional. And yeah, I think UCLA will be able to take it here.
Yeah, there's something about those West Coast hosts as well. Not quite the fan environment that you're getting in those SEC games, but having to travel all the way to the West Coast, move over a couple time zones, it is an adjustment, and it is difficult to play over there, even if it's not necessarily the crowd environment and the intimidation. There's certainly an effect on your body and just your familiarity with the playing field.
Yep, definitely. And now headed to the Durham Super Regional, where we have Duke hosting Murray State. Neither team's national seeds, but yeah, both super impressive weekends. Starting with Duke, only played 3 games. Just looked like a very solid squad overall. Had some pretty tight games, beating Georgia 6-3, and then Oklahoma State in the final 3-2. But this Duke team looks like a very solid squad and could make a very deep run. The ACC, five teams in supers, with the SEC only having 4, like you mentioned earlier. I think Duke is a team that had the talent preseason, but never really showed it all coming together at the same point, and maybe now's the time for that. But switching over to the other side, Murray State, just an incredible story. Yeah, seemed like Ole Miss was gonna get him in the end in that final 7th game. But Murray State somehow able to eke out that 12-11 win. They were up, I think, 12-3 at one point, and Ole Miss was just chipping away. They had some pretty big innings near the end of the game, and it seemed like all the momentum was going their way. And we felt like the story was written on the walls already. But yeah, somehow Murray State able to stick it out. That would have been a real just gut-wrenching defeat if they lost that one, just having such a big lead. But somehow able to stop the momentum that Ole Miss had and shut them down and win the regional. Super impressive stuff. Yeah, it was a tough regional with Georgia Tech, Western Kentucky. Those teams looked like teams that could make it to Omaha as well. Who knows? But somehow Murray State, the team to really show up. And yeah, super impressed with the squad. But looking back at things now, this team has the writings of a potential 4 seed that could win a regional. They were just put into such a difficult one, and for them to come out of it was very impressive. Just showing the teams that they had to go up against consistently, and the offense just did not quit. Pitching, pretty iffy, but yeah, putting up the offensive numbers that they had is going to be tough to beat for any team. But feel like Duke will stop the momentum of Murray State in this next round. Just feels like it's such a tough journey to go be as a 4 seed, come out of a regional, and then go on the road again and do it all over again, especially in just a normal set weekend series. And yeah, Duke had relatively low numbers for ERA. The earned runs were one of the lower ones for some teams, and Murray State did not have that on their side of things. So I think Duke will be able to calm them down and yeah, stop the run that Murray State's on.
Yeah, that run from Murray State was nothing short of incredible. Oxford Regional was right up there with the Hattiesburg Regional as one of our toughest in the field. It felt like those two were neck and neck. I definitely felt like it was going to be Georgia Tech or Ole Miss coming out of this one. Felt like Western Kentucky was certainly capable, and Murray State was one of the most dangerous four seeds in the field, if not the most dangerous four seed. Felt like they could have been a three, but just given the competition in the field, didn't see them actually making it out of this. But the offense showed out, like you said, did just enough in that final game to squeeze out into this super regional. And Duke, the talented team, has had their ups and downs throughout the year. Hasn't been consistent, but like you said, if they're hot now, the sky's the limit. This is a team that could go deep. We just really haven't seen that consistency from them throughout the season. Would be a great time to put it together back to back weekends and maybe another after that if they make it into Omaha as well. I will take them to make it into Omaha. I think they take this series at home against Murray State. Should be a fun one. This will be another one that's just exciting to watch just from a fan perspective, especially when it's two teams that weren't hosting a regional. This is the second spot in there where neither of the hosts made it. So it's a fun one. Yeah, I'll stick with Duke here.
Cool. Well, now headed to another place where four seeds made some big moves. We're going to the Baton Rouge Super Regional, starting with LSU making it out of their side facing West Virginia. LSU, the number 6 overall national seed. West Virginia was the 2 seed in the Clemson Regional, but the main props goes to the 4 seed Little Rock in that LSU Regional. Most definitely the worst team on paper going in. Had by far under 500 record. I believe they had to pretty much win the College World Series for them to make it to 500, something like that. But they just showed that the record does not matter this time of year. Any team that makes it into the tournament is hot. They had to go on a very impressive run in the conference tournament. They were, I believe, the last team in from their conference. So to be able to win their conference tournament, that gives you enough momentum to, I guess, show up to LSU's regional and really show out, putting up 22 runs against Rhode Island. Not the best pitching staff, I would say, but 22 runs is 22 runs, and then go out again and beat, just look at the most impressive run that we can see. The Little Rock beating DBU in that second losers game and then facing LSU again and taking that first game. Really felt like LSU had this thing handled. One of the lighter regionals, we thought maybe the lightest, with DBU seeming like the only competition. But somehow, after losing that first game against LSU in the first round without scoring a run, the offense really started to light up, and it did seem like Little Rock had a very big chance going into that final regional final game. They had the lead, I believe, 5-1 at one point, but LSU just had too much ability. They're just overall better team. Were able to put in some pitchers from that first game as well back into the game and shut things down in the end. And Little Rock only scored 1 run after that, and LSU put up 10 runs in the end. But it doesn't matter where Little Rock ended their season. This was an extremely impressive run to be able to do what they did in the conference tournament and flip the switch and continue that throughout the regionals as well. Very impressive stuff, especially considering DBU not a slouch at all to be able to go through and beat them in one of the losers games. And yeah, just give it to LSU in one game as well. Very impressive stuff.
Yeah, it definitely felt like this LSU regional was arguably the easiest in the field, but Little Rock giving them a run for their money, that was exciting. And like you mentioned, had the lead in that game 7 too. Looked like we could have been in for one of the biggest upsets in recent memory. That would have been insane. LSU edges out of there though, and West Virginia on the other side coming out of the Clemson regional didn't necessarily expect that either. I don't know. This Clemson team's an interesting one. Very talented, but just feels like they didn't quite have the it factor that they've had in the past years. Those past year teams also didn't make it to Omaha, but it felt like there was a it factor with those teams. They just had that energy, found ways to win. Didn't feel like this Clemson team was quite on the same level throughout the year. And West Virginia was a team that felt like was brawling through the end of the season. Really struggled the last couple weeks. Struggled in the Big 12 tourney. Team that seems like everyone kind of wrote off coming into the postseason, that they just weren't playing their best baseball and didn't look like the team that they did throughout the first 3 quarters of the season, myself included, writing them off there. And it was my most underrated team coming into the year, so I should have been backing them still. They come out of there. Should be a fun super here. LSU's the biggest favorite there is in super regionals, so we'll see if it's not competitive like the sports books figure. LSU is going to have a huge advantage at home here. I'll stick with LSU. Would love to see West Virginia pull this one off. I just don't really see it happening. I think LSU is extremely talented, one of the best teams left in the field here, and can just out talent West Virginia in a lot of facets of the game.
Yeah, I think LSU, especially with their 1-2 punch, it's just set up perfectly for a weekend series. Might end this thing in 2 games, just depending on if the offense can give them anything. But having two elite starting pitchers just puts you in such an advantage. We're looking at teams like that and North Carolina in a similar way, where they just are, head above the rest in most aspects of the starting pitching game. And this West Virginia team, yeah, like you mentioned, definitely on a down spell going into the end of the year, but turned it around just in time. Clemson, I wanted to believe in them. That's why I had them going to make it to Omaha, but there was that part of me that just knew that they didn't have it. I mentioned it last week where for some reason there's something off about this Clemson team. They haven't really proved it. They had a few decent weeks throughout the week or throughout the year, especially. I mean, they had to have been to be a number one overall seed, but yeah, just felt like I wanted to believe more than they believed in themselves. But yeah, I mean, it was tough. Felt like Cam Canarella wanted him to get him to Omaha. That would have been great to see, but yeah, came up short. West Virginia just took the regional in 3 games, and yeah, it should. Hopefully, it's a fun series, but it's tough to look past LSU right now.
Yeah, it's difficult. It feels like LSU will take this one pretty easily. It seems like LSU's one of the favorites at this point to win the whole thing, right up there with Arkansas and Tennessee as well. So it feels like those are kind of the three at the top there. North Carolina on the other side. So it'll be interesting to see who comes from this part of the bracket.
Yep, and speaking about Arkansas and Tennessee, the Fayetteville Super Regional, both teams looked really good. Arkansas, especially, pitching looked dominant. Barely gave up any runs, 6 throughout the 3 games. So really set them up nicely for this weekend coming up. Didn't get off schedule at all. Tennessee had a few close games out there, but was able to turn it on when it mattered most in that final game against Wake Forest after losing the previous game 7-6, beating them 11-5, and the offense just didn't stop. It seemed like Wake Forest had a very good run, had a lot of runs scored, even after losing their first game against Cincinnati. Was able to turn it around, but definitely wanted to see Tennessee face both Cincinnati and Wake Forest, which we did get to see. It felt like they just give such different looks. Cincinnati, a very aggressive base running team, while Wake Forest is much more of a SEC style, just power home run team, get on base and then hit a few balls over the fence, and that plays really well at Tennessee's ballpark. But Cincinnati definitely had their opportunities as well against Tennessee, because we've talked about it before. Tennessee just apparently doesn't care about the little things in the game of baseball. They have enough talent to get past it. They don't care about throwing runners out, keeping runners close to the bag, and defense hasn't been the best either. But yeah, I think that might bite them against Arkansas in this super regional. We'll have to see, but I think just looking overall, hopefully Arkansas, they finally get past their struggles as of recent. Haven't had the best luck recently the past few years making it to Omaha, but I have Arkansas here. Should be an extremely exciting series. They played super tight games throughout the year when they played each other. So this rematch, Arkansas Tennessee, will be a great one to watch. Hopefully it goes 3 games as well.
Yeah, Arkansas absolutely handled their regional with ease. That was another one that was pretty easy on the board. Felt like they would handle it with ease, and they did. Tennessee was a fun one. All 4 of those teams were solid, especially offensively. Like you mentioned, kind of a different look with Cincinnati compared to Wake Forest and Miami, who were uh, absolutely mashing the ball there. Tennessee as well, obviously. This is a very interesting super regional, probably the most high profile one on the board here. Um, this should be electric. Obviously, Tennessee still kind of the villain in college baseball for a lot of people. Definitely myself. I'll be pulling for Arkansas here, especially at home. And we've mentioned it pretty much every single week in the last month or two that Arkansas is probably the best team in the country when they're playing their best. Probably has the highest ceiling in the country, and it seems like they're playing their best right now. Looking very confident, clicking in all facets of the game. I'll pick them to take this series here and continue on to winning the College World Series.
Yeah, obviously we had both of our predictions before the tournament started were Arkansas to win the College World Series, so not going to change up at this point because they did prove it the first round that they looked like one of the best teams, so no real reason to change our opinions from here on out. But yeah, we'll see how things go in the super regionals. Super exciting, a lot of fun matchups, some upsets, but they're still some of the top teams. I think on paper, the top teams, at least from an outside perspective, not looking at what the rankings were or how things were seated in the end, felt like at least for me, Arkansas, LSU, um, North Carolina, those 3 teams were some of the best teams, if not the best 3, at least throughout the entire season. Just looking at a broad scope of things, so those 3 teams making it, no real surprise to me. But obviously the top 2 overall seeds being out was a shock. Maybe not as much as Ole Miss going down to what they did, but overall should be extremely exciting. Any last thoughts from you?
No, like you mentioned, a lot of upsets, but it does feel like those top teams are still in there. I would have said the same going into this tournament that Arkansas, LSU, North Carolina, loop in Tennessee as well as the teams that felt the most capable of winning this all kind of as the favorites. Obviously Tennessee has a hard draw facing Arkansas here in the super regionals, but if they come out of that, I feel like they're one of the top teams going into Omaha. Certainly a talented team, just hasn't really lived up to expectations throughout the year and struggled at times. But yeah, should be super exciting. A lot of good matchups here, and can't wait to see what happens.
Lovely stuff. Well, we will catch you on the other side of Super Regionals when the field for Omaha is set. All 8 teams will be done by Monday evening, I believe. Hopefully, we get some of those Monday games because that means game 3s are happening. But we will catch you after that for our recap and preview of Omaha. And yeah, we have been the Sweet Baseball Podcast. See you next time. Peace.